There is a white powder that eliminates powdery mildew, suppresses gray mold, and prevents the fungal diseases that destroy vegetable gardens, rose bushes, and fruit trees. At a cost of $1 per season, it is baking soda. Dissolved in water at a concentration of 1 teaspoon per liter. Sprayed on plant leaves once a week. The fungicide market in the United States generates approximately $2 billion per year. Bayer, Syngenta, BASF, and their competitors sell branded fungicide products for garden use at prices ranging from $15 to $40 per bottle. The active mechanisms in many of these products, raising the pH of the leaf surface to a level where fungal spores cannot germinate, are chemically related to the same principle that baking soda exploits at a fraction of the cost. The white powder in the garden center costs $30 a bottle. The white powder in the kitchen costs $1 per box and contains enough material to treat a large garden for an entire season. This is the story of what fungal plant diseases actually are, why baking soda stops them, what the commercial fungicides actually contain, and why the most effective preventive treatment in the home garden has been sitting in the baking aisle rather than the garden aisle for the entire time you have been spending money on Daconil. Fungal diseases are the most common category of plant disease in home gardens, affecting virtually every species grown in temperate climates. Powdery mildew, gray mold, botrytis cinerea, black spot on roses, early blight on tomatoes, downy mildew on cucumbers, and anthracnose on a range of vegetables and ornamentals all represent fungal infections of plant tissue. The biology of fungal plant disease follows a consistent pattern, regardless of species. Fungal spores land on plant surfaces, carried by wind, water splash, or insect contact. Given the right conditions of humidity and temperature, the spore germinates and produces hyphae, the thread-like structures that penetrate plant tissue and begin extracting nutrients. The fungal colony grows within and on the plant tissue, eventually producing new spores that spread to adjacent plants and begin the cycle again. The critical window for intervention is germination, the moment between spore landing on the leaf surface and successful penetration of the plant tissue. Once a fungal infection is established inside the plant tissue, treatment becomes significantly more difficult and less effective. Prevention and early intervention are categorically more effective than treatment of established infections. This is the insight that makes pH manipulation such an effective approach to fungal disease management. It targets the germination window precisely, disrupting the conditions that spores require to germinate before they can establish themselves inside the plant. Fungal spores are exquisitely sensitive to pH. The cell wall chemistry of fungal spores is optimized for germination within a specific pH range, typically between 6 and 7, which is the mildly acidic to neutral range that characterizes most plant leaf surfaces under normal conditions. When the pH of the leaf surface rises above 7 into the mildly alkaline range, the spore's ability to germinate is compromised. The enzymes required for cell wall synthesis and hyphal growth are pH-dependent, and alkaline conditions denature or inhibit these enzymes before germination can be completed. The spore lands on the leaf, finds a pH environment outside its functional range, and fails to establish. It desiccates and dies without infecting the plant. Baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, is mildly alkaline. When dissolved in water and applied to plant leaf surfaces, it raises the surface pH into the range where fungal spore germination is inhibited. The effect is not permanent. The baking soda solution weathers off the leaf surface with rain and normal environmental exposure, but weekly reapplication maintains a consistently elevated surface pH that prevents germination throughout the treatment period. A study conducted by researchers at Cornell University in the 1990s established that sodium bicarbonate at concentrations of 1 to 2% significantly reduced powdery mildew infection rates on a range of host plants compared to untreated controls. The effect was primarily preventive. Applied before infection established, it was highly effective. Applied after visible infection had developed, it arrested further spread but did not eliminate existing lesions. This research established the principle that has since been replicated in multiple studies across different fungal pathogens and host plant species. Sodium bicarbonate works. It is not a folk remedy or a horticultural myth. It is a documented antifungal mechanism that operates through the same pH disruption principle that more expensive commercial formulations exploit through different chemical means. The commercial fungicide products sold in garden centers use a range of active ingredients: copper compounds, sulfur, chlorothalonil, myclobutanol, propiconazole, each working through different mechanisms. Understanding what each does and what it costs changes the calculation about when commercial products are justified and when baking soda is sufficient. Copper-based fungicides, copper hydroxide, copper sulfate, copper octanoate, work through the toxicity of copper ions to fungal cell membranes. They are effective broad-spectrum fungicides with a long history of use in organic agriculture. They are also toxic to aquatic organisms and accumulate in soil with repeated application, which has led to restrictions on their use in some regions. A 24-ounce bottle of copper fungicide retails for $15 to $25. Sulfur-based fungicides work through the direct toxicity of sulfur vapor to fungal tissue. They are effective against powdery mildew and a range of other fungal diseases, but can cause phytotoxicity, plant tissue damage, when applied in high temperatures or to sulfur-sensitive species. Sulfur fungicide products retail for $12 to $20 per bottle. Chlorothalonil, the active ingredient in decanol, one of the most widely used garden fungicides, is a broad-spectrum fungicide that disrupts multiple metabolic pathways in fungal cells simultaneously, making resistance development very slow. It is also classified as a possible human carcinogen by the EPA, is highly toxic to aquatic organisms, and has been banned or restricted in several European countries. Decanol retails for $15 to $20 per bottle. Myclobutanol and propiconazole, systemic fungicides that are absorbed into plant tissue and provide protection from within, are the most powerful tools for treating established fungal infections that have penetrated plant tissue. For severe infections that have already established inside the plant, these systemic products provide options that surface treatments, including baking soda, cannot match. The honest comparison is this. For prevention of common fungal diseases in the home garden, powdery mildew on squash and cucumbers, black spot on roses, early blight on tomatoes, weekly baking soda application is comparable in effectiveness to copper and sulfur-based protectant fungicides at a fraction of the cost and without the soil accumulation and aquatic toxicity concerns. For treating established infections, particularly those involving systemic fungal spread within plant tissue, commercial systemic fungicides have advantages that baking soda cannot replicate. The product that most home gardeners are reaching for, a broad-spectrum protectant fungicide like Decanil, is addressing the same prevention window that baking soda addresses through a more expensive and more environmentally concerning mechanism. The addition of horticultural oil or a small amount of liquid soap to the baking soda solution significantly improves its effectiveness through two mechanisms. Oil forms a thin film on the leaf surface that extends the residence time of the baking soda, slowing weathering by rain and dew and maintaining the elevated pH for longer between applications. It also has direct antifungal activity against certain pathogens by disrupting the lipid membranes of fungal structures on the leaf surface. Liquid soap at low concentration, a few drops per liter, acts as a surfactant that improves the spread and adhesion of the solution on the leaf surface. Without a surfactant, water-based solutions bead up on the waxy surface of many plant leaves and run off before adequate contact is made. With a surfactant, the solution spreads evenly and adheres, ensuring consistent pH exposure across the entire leaf surface. The enhanced formulation, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of horticultural oil, and a few drops of liquid soap per liter of water, is the version documented in multiple university extension service recommendations as an effective organic fungicide for home garden use. The total material cost per application is under 50 cents. The coverage per liter is sufficient to treat a substantial garden area. This formulation is sometimes called the Cornell formula, after the university where the baking soda research was originally conducted. It has been recommended by University Cooperative Extension Services in multiple states as an effective, low-cost, low-toxicity alternative to commercial fungicides for home garden use. Here is why this information is not on the label of the Decanil bottle or displayed prominently at the garden center. The commercial fungicide market is structured around patented active ingredients and branded products. Chlorothalonil, Daconal's active ingredient, is off-patent, but the formulation, packaging, and brand recognition of Daconal represent significant investment. The garden center shelf space is allocated through relationships between manufacturers and retailers, with shelf placement driven by marketing agreements and margin considerations. Baking soda cannot be sold as a fungicide without EPA registration for that specific claim. The EPA registration process for pesticides, including fungicides, requires documented efficacy data, toxicology studies, and registration fees that a commodity ingredient sold primarily as a food product cannot economically support. Arm & Hammer has no incentive to register sodium bicarbonate as a fungicide. No company can patent the compound. No one will fund the registration to create a competitive product that anyone can duplicate with a grocery store purchase. The result is that the Cornell University research, published in peer-reviewed journals, replicated across multiple studies, and recommended by state cooperative extension services, sits in academic literature and extension service fact sheets rather than on the packaging of a product displayed at eye level in every garden center in the country. The garden centers display what generates margin. Baking soda generates margin at the grocery store, not the garden center. University Extension Services, the agricultural outreach programs of state land-grant universities funded by public money to provide practical agricultural information to growers, have documented and recommended baking soda-based fungicide applications for decades. This is not hidden information. It is information that has no commercial sponsor and therefore no amplification. Here is the practical application framework. The preventive application schedule is the foundation of effective fungal disease management with baking soda. Apply before symptoms appear at the beginning of the growing season and maintained weekly throughout the periods of highest disease pressure. For powdery mildew on cucumbers, squash, and melons, this means beginning applications when the plants start to vine and the canopy begins to close, creating the humid conditions that powdery mildew requires. For roses susceptible to black spot, begin applications in spring as new growth emerges and continue weekly through the growing season. Black spot spores are active throughout the season, wherever conditions of leaf wetness and moderate temperatures exist. For tomatoes and peppers susceptible to early blight and anthracnose, begin applications when plants are transplanted and continue through the season, with increased frequency during rainy periods when spore dispersal and germination conditions are most favorable. The formulation: 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1 teaspoon horticultural oil, a few drops liquid soap per liter of water, should be mixed fresh before each application. The components are not stable in solution over extended periods. Mix, apply immediately, and discard any unused solution rather than storing it for the next application. Apply in the early morning or evening, avoiding application in full sun when temperatures are high. The oil component can cause leaf burn in high temperatures and direct sunlight. The solution should coat the upper and lower leaf surfaces thoroughly, as fungal spores can land on either surface. Do not apply during flowering if bee activity is present, as the soap component can be harmful to bees on direct contact. Apply in early morning before peak bee foraging activity, or in the evening after activity has declined. For infections that have already visibly established, the white powdery coating of powdery mildew on squash leaves, the dark spots of black spot on rose leaves, baking soda application will slow further spread, but will not eliminate existing lesions. Remove and dispose of heavily infected leaves rather than leaving them on the plant to serve as a continuing spore source, and treat the remaining foliage with the baking soda formulation to prevent spread to new growth. Here is the synthesis. Fungal plant diseases infect through spore germination on leaf surfaces. Spores require a specific pH range to germinate. Baking soda raises leaf surface pH above that range and prevents germination. The Cornell University research documented this effect in the 1990s. State cooperative extension services have recommended it since. The mechanism is identical to what commercial protectant fungicides accomplish through more expensive and in some cases more environmentally concerning chemistry. The $2 billion fungicide market depends on home gardeners not knowing that a weekly spray of baking soda solution prevents the diseases those products treat. Not all of them. Systemic fungicides for established infections have genuine advantages. But for the prevention of the most common fungal diseases in the home garden, the grocery store product outperforms the garden center product at 1% of the cost. 1 teaspoon per liter, once a week, before you see spots.